Well, this is the first of a series of short talks that I'm going to be making concerning some foundational understandings that people have in their lives. And with the solid foundation, it sends your thinking, your actions, your values in one direction. And with a less solid foundation, say building on the beach in the sand, um, your ideas and thoughts, your values will go in a different direction. And so here's a foundation I'd like you to consider. And it has to do with creation. Genesis 2:7. The Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. God created the human race from a man the Bible calls Adam. And the story is how that ultimately this man and his wife were put into a garden, a beautiful place, and instructed to populate the earth and to make this world the home of the human race. It says in Genesis 1:27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. God blessed them. God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And this is where the human family has its origins, according to the Bible. The image that God put into the human race is carried from generation to generation, science tells us, through our DNA, which is like an incredibly complex recording system. Science tells us that the human image, from every detail of our body, our systems, is captured and reproduced in our DNA. Amazing. And this image that God put into the human race was in Adam and Eve, and every available combination of DNA was available within this first couple. And from them came the different nationalities, the different nations, the different peoples, but all carrying that one same image, only variations of the same. Until ultimately, the entire planet was populated with the peoples who all hold that one same image in this incredibly complex recording system, the DNA. And the Bible also tells us that we are one blood. Now, there may be variations of blood, O, A, B, AB, but if you look at the graphic here, you'll notice that they all have interrelated dependencies. Acts 17:26, God is made of one blood, all nations of men, for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. We are one image, we share one blood. And we are one family. Acts 17, God is actually not far from any one of us, for we are his children. Malachi 2:10, do we not all have one Father? Did not one God create us? We are one blood. We are one image. We are one family. This is what the Bible teaches. We go to the book of Revelation, where God gives us a wonderful vision of a yet future time. And in Revelation 7:9, John said, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations, and kindreds, and people, and tongues, stood before the throne. Nations, kindreds, people, tongues. The human family is divided into nations, kindreds, peoples, tongues, but we are only one race. We are the human race. One family, one blood, one image. Where does the term races and the idea of a different races or different races, where does this even come from? Well, let's take a look. Charles Darwin wrote, the various races, when carefully compared and measured, differ much from each other, as in texture of hair, relative proportions of all parts of the body, the capacity of the lungs, the form and capacity of the skull, and even the convolutions of the brain. And he continues to write, but it would be an endless task to specify the numerous points of difference. The races differ also in constitution, acclimation, and liability to certain diseases. Their mental characteristics are likewise very distinct, chiefly as it would appear in their emotion, but partly in their intellectual facilities. This is found in The Descent of Man, chapter 7. Evolution teaches that we are not one people, not one family, not one image, not one blood, but we are separated into different races, some better than others. In The Descent of Man, Darwin noted the different theories the new evolutionists had in deciding how many races there actually were. He writes, man has been studied more carefully than any other animal, and yet there is the greatest possible diversity amongst capable judges, whether he should be classed as a single species or race, or as 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 15, 16, 22, 60, 63, according to these different scientific experts of that day. This diversity of judgment does not prove that the races ought not to be ranked as species, but it shows that they graduated into each other, and that it is hardly possible to discover clear, distinctive characters between them. Look at the chart on the left, where it shows one species of humans evolving from, it looks like a caribou, possibly a bear, another species of animals coming up through the ranks as a giraffe, at one point a pig, an elephant, and finally an African. Is this not racism? Is this not the teaching that humans are different races and some are superior to the others, and that we are not the same? This is racism. This is raw racism, and it's taught by the people that gave us the theory of evolution, not from the Bible. Several social and political developments that occurred at the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century led to the transformation in the discourse of race. Three movements that historians have considered are the coming of mass democracy, the age of imperialistic expansion, colonialization, and the impact of Nazism. More than any other, the violence of Nazi rule, the Holocaust, World War II transformed the whole discussion of race. Nazism made an argument for racial superiority based on a biological basis. teachings of Hitler and his group was that the Germans were the master race, the superior race. This led to the idea that people could be divided into discrete groups, and based on the divisions, there would be severe, torturous, and often fatal consequences. The exposition of the racial theory, beginning in the Third Reich up to the final solution, created a popular moral revolution against racism. Our world was shocked when we found out how far this teaching of evolution and the different species of humans could actually be in conflict with one another, and that the inferior should be weeded out and kept away from the superior races so that evolution could progress at a much better rate. This is from Wikipedia. Nazi eugenics refers to the social policies of eugenics in Nazi Germany. The racial ideology of Nazism placed the biological improvement of the German people by selective breeding of Nordic or Aryan traits at its center. Eugenics research in Germany before and during the Nazi period was similar to that in the United States. You don't hear much about this in your schools, particularly California, by which it had been heavily inspired. Who inspired Hitler? The United States. However, its prominence rose sharply under Adolf Hitler's leadership. Here's a map from the early last century showing the eugenics laws that were being passed in the United States for the legal sterilization of certain races of people in America to prevent their growth and spread. And this is the ultimate result of that type of teaching, getting rid of the less developed through mass murder. In 1950, and as a response to the genocide of Nazism, the United Nations group UNESCO was formed and released a statement saying there was no biological determinant or basis for race. There is no biological determinant or basis for race. According to the United Nations, the teaching that we are different races is racist. In 1978, the General Assembly of UNESCO published a Declaration on Race and Racial Prejudice. It states that all human beings belong to a single species. All peoples of the world possess equal facilities for attaining the highest level of intellectual, technical, social, economic, cultural, and political development. The difference between the achievements of the different people are entirely attributable to the geographical, historical, political, economic, social, and cultural factors. Any theory, look at this, any theory of evolution, which involves the claim that racial or ethnic groups are inherently superior or inferior, thus implying that some would be entitled to dominate and eliminate others presumed to be inferior, or which bases value judgments on racial differentiation, has no scientific foundation and is contrary to the moral, ethical principles of humanity. The teaching of evolution, as brought to us by Charles Darwin and other scientists of their day, fall under the category of racist. Someone who holds the theory of evolution, as taught by its founder, would hold to the teaching that the human animal quite possibly sprang from many different sources and is indeed multiple races or even a grouping of multiple species. The teaching of the theory of evolution is based upon the concept of survival of the fittest, and that some species or races are less fit or less developed than others. These two concepts are racism and race supremacy. We see this graph of the development of the human races from the teaching of the racist theory of evolution, where they sprang up at different places and different times from different sources, some more advanced than others, competing for this planet, or we all are one family, coming from the special creation of God through Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve carried within their DNA all the diversity, all the differences, all the beauty that we today are as one human family. You choose which foundation you stand on. Well, I hope you've learned something, and if you have, I would like to encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where you'll hear other teachings like this and also many teachings concerning things in the Bible. Thank you very much for your time. You can subscribe by clicking on the icon on the lower right-hand corner. Or you can locate a church in your community if you would like to fellowship with people who believe similar things.